You've been using Claude like a smarter search engine. You probably type a question, read an answer, copy some of it. You're only getting about 10% of what it can actually do. So here's the thing, right? That's not a prompting problem. It's not even right about writing better prompts. It's about having the wrong picture what the tool can actually do for you. Now, most marketing teams that I talk to probably use Claude the same way. They open a tab, they type something like, write me a campaign brief for our summer sale. They read what comes back to them and then spend the next hour turning that text into probably a usable document. Maybe a deck, maybe a tracker, or a report the manager can send to a client. Now, there's something about the entire workflow that gets me going, right? Because I know that the output isn't bad. Claude's actually pretty good at writing. But the process itself is completely wrong because you've added a step rather than removing one. So, what I want to show you today is a different way of thinking about this. So, not a different prompting technique, but rather a different entire mental model. So Claude isn't a writing assistant. It's actually a workflow engine. And once that clicks, every task currently that eats up your time starts to look like something you could hand off completely. Not just partially, but completely. And this is the video, and this is the first video in a series that I am calling Claude for Marketing. Each episode here covers a specific role. So, content writers, social media managers, marketing managers, performance marketers, brand managers, and shows exactly what changes when you stop using Claude like a chatbot and start using it like the workflow tool it actually is meant to be. Today's video is the foundation. If the reframe lands right, everything else in the series will make a lot more sense. So, let's get into it. Okay, now let me show you something concrete first because I think abstract explanations of this problem miss the point entirely. So here's a task that most marketing managers at least do once a week. You've got a campaign brief, right? Let's say it's for a brand called Orenda. And this is a mid-size direct to consumer, a D2C skincare brand. And they've got a Diwali campaign coming up. Now, the brief that they've given you is about 2 pages. It's got the campaign objective, the target audience, the key messages, the budget, the timeline, the channels that they're trying to activate, the standard stuff in the industry. Now, your job is to turn that into a stakeholder deck, something that your brand team and the agency can actually work from in the kickoff meeting. Now, the chatbot version of this task would probably go something like this. Okay, so the chatbot version of this task would probably go something like this. So you'd open Claude, right? You type something like, here's my campaign brief. So you have your entire brief here, right? And you'd say, turn this into a presentation outline. So then you would just simply say that, hey, this is my brief and I want to create a presentation out of it. And then you'd probably mention for what. So let's say for a stakeholder kickoff deck. Now, you would want to also attach the brief. So I'm going to quickly do that. So I have the brief in the format of, uh, let's say, a PDF, right? Now I'm going to quickly attach this back into this. So let's say I'm going to do that and then hit send. Now I'm just going to quickly wait for this to run. So I have the entire outline right here. Now, what you get back is a text outline. This is pretty good, right? Actually, it's got a great logical structure. So it tells you, this is going to be on the cover. That's the opportunity. This is who we're talking to, what we're trying to say, and the strategy at glance, right? And it covers everything. So the campaign overview, audience, messaging, hierarchy, channel plan, timeline. The thinking is absolutely sound, right? But then what? What do you do with this? You probably just copy this entire thing into PowerPoint or Google Slides and you start building slides manually. So you're formatting basically text boxes, you're picking fonts, adjusting spacing, adding a logo, making sure that the title on each slide are consistent. And probably, let's say, an hour later, maybe 90 minutes later, you've got even a longer brief that you just saw right here is not something that's broken, right? It works. And if someone has been doing it this way for years before actually Claude existed, they'd say that Claude saved them time because it actually did. It gave them the structure. But here's the honest question that I want to ask you. Did Claude do the job for you, or did it just do one step of the job while you did the rest? Well, the job was to not produce an outline like this, but rather the entire kickoff deck. What Claude gave you was just an outline in the chart window, and you yourself had to sit manually and turn it into a deck. So you're the person who did most of the actual work. And that's the chatbot model, right? So Claude drafts, you produce, and it's genuinely useful, but it's only 20% of what's available. Here's the shift that I want to make, right? Think about the difference between two types of people you might bring into this project. First person, you hand them a brief, they write you something, you take it from there, right? And the second person, you just hand them a brief. They come back with the finished deliverable, completely formatted, structured, and ready to send. Both are useful, but they're completely different to work with. The first one saves you the thinking time, while the second one saves you the production time, which is usually where most of the hours actually go. Now, cloud for you can be either of those people. Most marketing teams are just focusing on using it as the first one. The teams getting real leverage from it are using it like the second. So, what makes the difference, right? It's something called a skill. So, let's understand what exactly is a skill. So, a Claude skill is a pre configured workflow. So, it's not a prompt, right? You must understand that. A prompt is an instruction that you type every time, right? A skill is something that you only set once. So once you have set it, you basically end up using this skill multiple times. So it's a trained workflow. So it goes from, let's say, point A up till point B, then it goes to point C, right? And then maybe it uses C to update B, and so on and so forth. So it's a complete workflow, right, for a specific job. And here you usually have a trigger, so something that invokes the skill. So let's say an input, right? So the trigger determines when you need it, why you need it, etc. So Claude here uses the skill and then knows the entire job. It knows the output format, so it knows what kind of a format uh, it needs to generate based on the input that it receives. So the trigger acts as the point where you provide the input, and then it skips, has its own number of steps. So it goes from A to B to C to produce an output that is helpful for you, right? So you give it the input and then you directly get the output or the finished thing. Now, think about what that means for this Diwali deck example, right? So instead of writing a prompt, something like this, and asking Claude to give you the presentation outline, what it does is that you upload the brief, you trigger the PowerPoint X skill. So this skill could be something that's already inbuilt, and it could also be something that you create. And throughout this series, we're going to do both of them. So in today's video, we will actually invoke a skill, and in the future ones, we'll see how to write them on our own as well, right? So here we're going to invoke the PPTX skill, and Claude doesn't give you the text, right? So for at the end, it'll actually give you a PowerPoint file, structured slides, headings, content blocks, and probably a format that can directly open in PowerPoint or Google Slides. And that's the difference, right? So you have the same input, but instead of actually using a prompt, what you end up doing is that you use a skill and then an output is generated from that skill. And now imagine this, okay? This is not just limited to presentations. There are skills for content writers, for social media managers, for performance marketers working with PDF reports, for brand managers who are building documentation. Each one is trained for a very specific role and a specific kind of deliverable. And we will cover each of these in dedicated videos in the series. But today I actually wanted to show you the comparison, right? With the same brief. So the brief that you're going to be using is the same brief that is here. And we'll see how it differs from the chatbot version and the skill version. So the difference isn't abstract because you can see it right here. All right. So this is the Orenda skincare brief that let's say you received, right? So this is a Diwali campaign brief. It's about 3 pages long. And this is the kind of document that actually lands in a marketing manager's inbox, right? And it needs to be created, let's say, into a stakeholder deck by the end of the day. Now, before we had seen how to do this using the chatbot version, which is something that you'd probably do every day and how most marketers also function, right? So you go here, you attach the file, maybe, you give it the brief, a little prompt, and then what comes back is an outline, right? And this is a structured outline for the kickoff deck. Now, so, I'll probably be honest, this is what most marketing managers are doing. The output is pretty good. And Claude's going to also give you back something that's logical, right? So this is solid. You've gotten an executive summary and each and every outline, a complete outline, and each and every aspect that you actually require, right? And but this is the whole point, right? You're right now just looking at text in a chat window. To get a deck, you have to open PowerPoint, start a new presentation, build this slide by side, copying one by one and making it look like something that the client would actually like. And, I've timed myself actually doing something like this last week, and it almost gets me 2.5 hours to go from this to a usable 12 slide to, 15 slide deck with just working, quickly and having no design tweaks. So let's do the same skill with the PowerPoint presentation skill, right? Let's figure this out how to it's right here. But instead of actually writing a prompt directly, I am going to invoke a skill. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to trigger the PPTX skill and get it done. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to quickly type out and say, use the PPTX skill, create a stakeholder kickoff deck from this campaign brief. So now I have attached it, right? Let's say instead of HiQ, maybe let's use Sonnet, the model for this particular task. And now let it run. And, you know, let's just wait for it to run. Okay. So what's happening right now is very different from what had happened before, right? So Claude isn't generating an actual outline for me. Rather, it is creating a complete PPTX, so a complete PowerPoint presentation for me. So it's making the actual file. So you can see here it says creating the kickoff tag. And if you go down, you see that it's writing some kind of code and it's installing stuff and it's creating the outline for not just the outline, but it's also creating the actual campaign deck that they require. So you can see things like font size, you can see things like shapes, etc. And now it just says generate the PPTX. So it looks solid. Now visual things, it's adding some images into it, it's finding some other scripts, and then it's building it. Okay, so this is what came out, right? My tool had actually hit the limit, so I had to press continue so that it can continue the entire process. But now I have this right here in front of me. This is my complete deck that I need to send. So instead of just having, you know, the document outline and me having to put all of it into this. Now I've got my title slide, my campaign name, my campaign dates, a summary of what's going to be on today's agenda. I've got the objectives, I've got the entire overview, what's the budget, what's the campaign window, when does it go live, each and everything. And all of this, probably I got it under 3.5 or maybe 4 minutes. You see the difference. I am saving hours here. This is a 12.12 slide deck, and it can be opened in PowerPoint. It can also be added to your Google Drive. The formatting is absolutely clean. Each and everything is from my PDF that I had uploaded. Everything is readable. There are some touch points that they have mentioned. There is allocation with intent that it also shows. It tells me what we're going to produce, the kind of critical milestones, for the campaign to be live for 21 days to own Diwali. Now, from just uploading the brief, right, to having this file, I probably just took 5 minutes. 5. That's all I needed. 5. Now think about this way, right? The only difference is whether Claude gave me text to work with versus it actually gave me the finished thing. And that's the skill model, and that's what I mean when I say Claude is a workflow engine and not a chatbot. It's not doing one step of the job and handing it back, it's actually completing the job for you. So, the question now at hand is, where does this apply in your week? Here's the way that I like to think about it, right? Take any task where you currently use Claude to generate the text, and then you spend time turning that text into a deliverable. That gap between Claude's output and what you actually need to send, that's where a skill lives. Okay, so for most marketing teams, these tasks actually fall into, let's say, 3 buckets. The first bucket that we have at hand is called content creation. So this is the bucket where you're writing copy, script, social posts, emails. So you generate something in Claude, then you spend time cleaning it up, removing the air tone, formatting it for the platform. The humanizer skill actually handles that cleanup for you. The caption generator, the reel script generator, those handle the output format directly for you. The second bucket that is at hand is the bucket that is related to data and reporting. So, let's say you're getting PDFs from agencies, right? You're pulling numbers out of reports, rebuilding spreadsheets manually. The PDF reading skill extracts and structures that data. The Excel skill will basically build a spreadsheet for you. And then there exists the third bucket, which is presentations and documents. Now, this is something that I just showed you here. So presentations and documents creates your decks, your brand guides, your client reports, everything. So a PPTX skill, a DocX skill, a PDF output skill, all of it can get covered within this little framework that I just gave you. So if your team does any of those things, right, and most marketing teams probably do all 3 of them, there's a skill that can change that workflow. So here's a practical thing that you can actually do, this week. So let's say think about any one task, right? So I'm not asking you to think about multiple tasks. All I'm asking you to think about is that one task that takes most of the time to go from, let's say, the Claude's output to something you can actually use. And that's going to be a starting point, and that's also going to be the first skill that you can start learning properly. And it's also going to be worth the first skill that you learn here. Now, I've linked the relevant episodes in the description below. Each one covers a specific role and goes deep on that exact workflow. So find your role and probably you can start right there. Okay, one last thing before I go. This series is genuinely useful for marketers like me to understand and also useful for me to make. But if only I'm covering the right things, right? So if you've got 20 seconds, just drop a quick comment below with your job title and one task that takes up time in your week and still takes way longer than it actually should. I read all of the comments and that's how I decide what to cover next. If this video was useful for you, the next video in the series is going to cover skills in detail, what they actually are under the hood, how to trigger them, how to think about building a library of them for your team. So it's worth subscribing if any part of today's video landed with you. And if you want to learn more about AI and automation and how to use them in your daily life, don't forget to check out our channel. It's called Upskill Nexus, and I'll see you for the next one.